Harari, 2026 will hurt the wisest, not with screams, but with contempt. Yuval Harari. Part 1. The wound that makes no sound. Have you ever been in a room where your intelligence was the thing being punished? Not loudly, not with open hostility or declared opposition, but with something quieter and far more precise. A dismissal so subtle it could not be named. A conversation routed around you as though your presence were an inconvenience that politeness required everyone to pretend not to notice. A moment in which the depth of your thinking was not argued with, but simply treated as irrelevant, as socially inert, as a quality that the room had collectively decided carried no weight and required no response. If you have experienced this, you have encountered something that Yuval Noah Harari identifies as one of the defining social dynamics of the 21st century. Not the persecution of intelligence, not the old and visible kind of anti-intellectualism that burned books and silenced dissent with force. Something newer, something more sophisticated and therefore more difficult to resist. The contempt that does not announce itself, the marginalization that wears the face of normalcy. The way that a world organized around speed, emotion, and tribal loyalty quietly arranges itself so that the people who think most carefully about things are the last ones consulted about anything that matters. Harari has spent years documenting the broad structural forces reshaping human civilization. Artificial intelligence, biotechnology, the collapse of shared reality, the erosion of institutional trust. These are the large forces, the ones that generate headlines and policy debates and TED Talks. But within his framework, there is a smaller and more intimate argument that deserves separate attention. The argument about what happens to specific kinds of people, the ones who think carefully, who tolerate complexity, who resist simplification, who insist on following evidence rather than tribal signal, in environments that are not simply indifferent to these qualities, but that have developed sophisticated mechanisms for marginalizing them. The argument about what 2026 and the years clustering around it will feel like from the inside for the people who wake up to what is happening most clearly. And the argument is this: the pain will not come from screaming. It will come from contempt. A contempt so ambient, so built into the structure of every major informational and social environment, that most of the people exercising it will not even know they are doing so. To understand what Harari means by this, we have to begin not with the large forces, but with the small ones. With the texture of daily experience in an environment that has been progressively reorganized around incentives and design features that penalize exactly the qualities that careful thinking requires. We have to begin with what it actually feels like to be someone who thinks carefully in a world that has been optimized for someone who does not. Part 2. The architecture of contempt. Contempt is a specific emotional register. It is different from anger. Anger acknowledges the object of its feeling as significant enough to fight. It grants the person or thing it targets a kind of inverted recognition. Contempt does not even do that. Contempt dismisses. It treats its object as beneath the threshold of engagement. Not wrong, not dangerous, not worthy of argument or opposition, simply irrelevant. Simply not the kind of thing that the present social moment has any use for. And of all the social injuries available, contempt is in many ways the most difficult to resist, because you cannot argue with contempt. It does not present a position you can refute. It does not make a claim you can demonstrate is false. It simply turns away. And in turning away, it communicates something far more damaging than any argument. It communicates that you do not count. Harari's framework identifies the current informational and social environment as one that has developed through a combination of deliberate design and emergent dynamics, a specific architecture of contempt toward the qualities that genuine intelligence requires and expresses. This architecture is not a conspiracy. No single actor designed it. No coordinated effort produced it. It emerged from the aggregate of millions of individual decisions made by platform designers, content creators, algorithmic systems, and ordinary users, each responding rationally to the incentive structures of their environment. But the aggregate is real, and its effect on the people who most fully embody the qualities the environment marginalizes is concrete and increasingly severe. Consider what the dominant informational environments of the contemporary world actually reward. Speed. The fast take, delivered within minutes of an event, carries more social capital than the careful analysis delivered weeks later when the full picture has emerged. Certainty. The confident assertion, delivered without qualification or acknowledgement of complexity, travels further and faster than the honest expression of genuine uncertainty. Emotional intensity. The post that provokes outrage, fear, or tribal excitement reaches orders of magnitude more people than the post that encourages reflection or presents a carefully argued position. Identity performance. The communication that signals membership in the right tribe, that demonstrates loyalty to the correct values as defined by the group, receives validation in proportion to its tribal legibility, rather than its intellectual content. Each of these rewards is a punishment for the qualities that genuine intelligence requires. Genuine intelligence is slow. It does not arrive at conclusions quickly. It requires time to gather relevant information, to consider competing hypotheses, to identify the weaknesses in attractive positions, to sit with genuine uncertainty rather than resolving it prematurely into false certainty. In an environment that rewards speed, this slowness looks like incompetence or indecision. Genuine intelligence is uncertain. It knows what it does not know. It acknowledges the limits of available evidence. It resists the temptation of overconfidence that makes confident assertions so socially effective. In an environment that rewards certainty, this honest uncertainty looks like weakness. Genuine intelligence is emotionally quiet. It does not reach conclusions through emotional intensity. It distrusts its own strongest feelings as potential sources of bias. In an environment that rewards emotional intensity, this quietness is invisible. It generates no engagement, no shares, no algorithmic amplification. It simply disappears. This is the architecture of contempt. Not a declaration that intelligence is bad, not an argument against careful thinking. Simply an environment in which careful thinking generates no reward, receives no recognition, and therefore carries no social weight. In which the people who engage in it are not attacked for doing so, but simply passed over. In which the qualities that careful thought produces, nuance, uncertainty, slowness, emotional quiet, are treated not as virtues, but as social irrelevancies, as the marks of someone who has not understood how the current environment works, as indicators of a kind of social incompetence that the people most embedded in the environment cannot help finding, quietly, and without malice, contemptible. Part 3. Why 2026 specifically? The year 2026 is not arbitrary in Harari's framework, and understanding why requires understanding the specific trajectory of the forces he identifies as converging in the mid-decade period. Not because 2026 represents a single dramatic threshold, a single event after which everything changes, but because it represents the point at which several specific dynamics, each of which has been building for years, reach a combined intensity that makes their aggregate effect qualitatively different from anything that preceded it. The first dynamic is the maturation of the AI content environment. By 2026, the volume of AI-generated content circulating in the informational ecosystem will have grown to a point that fundamentally changes the relationship between human cognitive effort and informational output. The written word has always carried, however imperfectly, the weight of the human effort that produced it. The essay that took weeks to research and write communicated, through its existence, something about the value of the time and thought invested in it. As AI systems increasingly produce content indistinguishable in form from the product of sustained human intellectual effort, and as this content floods every informational channel at a volume that human production could never match, the relationship between intellectual labor and informational product changes fundamentally. The specific markers that allowed readers to infer the presence of genuine intellectual effort behind a piece of writing become unreliable.